Yo, what's going on? Okay, I wanted to. This has been on my mind for a bit, so I wanted to make a video about it. Um, it has to do with technology addiction and ego. So, um, when we're addicted to technology, our egos have fucking gains and superpowers. Um, and it's something that I've noticed resonates with people with a lot of people, like this concept. So I wanted to make a video about it. It highly resonates with me. Yeah. So I guess the first thing to do would be to explain like what ego is. So when I talk about ego, there's this version of it from the Vedic model of the mind that Dr. K uses, and he talks about ego as being a sense of identity, but we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on it being a protector of emotions. So it has multiple functions, but one of the functions is that it protects us from our emotions. So we might feel an emotion. So I marked it here as E. We might feel an emotion. And then when we feel emotional about something, our ego steps in to protect us. So it's like, oh shit, like I'm dealing with stress and anxiety of school or work or whatever. And then the ego's like, okay, let's like go play some Riz video games. Like let's just go play games for a couple hours. Let's go do something. So we like engage in that. And then when we engage in that, it like protects us from what we're feeling. And so now we don't, even though the emotion is still there, we don't feel it, and then it's like there. So what happens in addiction is over time, this emotion becomes huge. So now it's like E with a bunch of exclamation points, right? So this emotion becomes huge. So now the ego has to like find something more addictive for like the emotions to go away. So instead, so like here in this case, it's like some Riz video game. Maybe it's Dark Souls or like Ranked League or like something like this. So now like what this stuff is like all the shit that like these algorithms are cranking out, like this TikTok, the short form. Let's see, I don't know how why it does that. Okay, short form video content, um and then like watching other people play video games, like all this stuff that like is just there. Like the news is getting really good at this. So like, politics and all this stuff, it's like pulling on things. Um, and then when we engage in this, it covers this up, right? It's like we need a very strong drug to get us to not feel all the shit that we've been suppressing. Like it started off as this, but like we haven't been managing the emotion for a long time. And so now it's not that the ego has to work harder, it's that the ego has to find like a stronger thing to like block the emotions, right? And so what's really cool about this, what I find really cool about this now that I've been working at it for a while, it's probably not cool to someone who's actually addicted, like more addicted. Um, but anyways, what I find cool about this is that because I love telling people this. It's like, hey, maybe you can try doing something about this, right? So like if you can like remove this stuff, I'll let you play your Riz video game, but I'm just not letting you do all the like super low hanging, highly dopaminergic, low effort, like super like brain rot, whatever. You know, what the fuck is that? The stuff that zoots us, whatever these teenagers are saying. I'm trying to learn all the words like Riz and mid and stuff. Um, so like let's like like I'll like tell somebody like okay, like maybe they're they have issues with this, so I tell them, hey, like maybe try like blocking TikTok, blocking YouTube, etc. Maybe try like a week without it, um or 30 days without it or whatever. And then it's like everybody responds with like an emotion first. They're like, what? And then it goes to like some kind of reason why they can't do that. Or it like creates a scenario that's like way more than what I'm recommending. Right? So it's like, hey, like try like not doing TikTok or YouTube or like the super low hanging stuff for a week. And then it's like, yeah, maybe actually let's do like 6 months. Like in order to like actually In order for this to actually make a change in my life, I have to do like 6 months. Or it'll say something like, "Oh, that like sounds kind of pointless." Like, okay, sure, I do a week off of YouTube, and then what? Then I go back to YouTube. Like, who cares? Or I go like, "Oh yeah, cool, sounds good," and then it's like goes right back to watching some more YouTube, right? Um, and what I've found in my experience is that the ego is a sneaky little shit. So it's gonna find like your weakness, your weak point, because it is trying its fucking best to shut this off. It wants to shut this off so bad. And the thing with ego is that normally it's actually pretty adaptive. Like it's actually pretty, it's a useful part of the brain. But when we're addicted to something, it becomes very maladaptive. So it becomes this force that is trying its damnedest to cover this up by returning back to this like mindless stuff. Like it's trying really hard to do that. And it's basically just trying to help you. Um the other thing is that like algorithms are promoting this, right? So like literally like all this like stuff, all these like, I guess you call them drugs. They're like trying to make them more potent and more engaging and more like there's like a content war going on where it's like we've got to make it more engaging. We've got to like advertise our video games to children and like get them going on our games and stuff. And so like this is going to become a thing. But anyways, the main thing is the main thing to focus on is that when we are trying to reverse this, we have to feel our emotions. And part of feeling our emotions is going to involve doing things that make us feel really uncomfortable. And it's also going to activate this part of our brain very highly. Because once the ego shuts down, like once we start watching TikTok, the ego actually shuts down and it takes a break for a little bit. And like we can just kind of sit in the brain rot for a while, and like our ego isn't really even working that hard. We're just kind of like in the moment of the TikTok or in the or in the video or in the game that we're playing, right? Or something like this. So once we stop doing that, that's when the ego activates and comes up with all this shit. And the important thing is to notice that that is the ego, and that the ego's role is to protect us from the emotions, right? So like the sort of idea here is remove the low hanging fruits, right? And so that you can play your video game. And so I drew these circles like this intentionally. So like if I make a circle like here, right, this blue one, like this'll like if you play a video game, it'll cover some of the emotions, but then some of this shit, right, is gonna leak through. So you're gonna be like still feeling some shit. Or like if you go work out, or if you go do push-ups, or if you go meditate, or if you just spend some time without your phone, like you're gonna feel some emotions, right? And that's the goal, is we want you to feel some emotions. So we don't want you engaging in something that's gonna cover up the whole thing, right? So like a short form video is gonna cover up the whole thing. We want you to like disallow all that stuff, but then you can still allow some technology that like blocks some emotions, but then you still feel uncomfortable. Like I'll feel like uncomfortable while I'm playing the game, and like it takes a little, almost like more effort to like block out the emotion. The other thing to note is that like maybe after a video that I make, like maybe like you watch it and you're like, oh shit, like let's fucking go. Like I'm actually, this sounds great. Like now I understand my ego more. That sounds great. I'm excited. And then the emotions actually tell you to like, hey, let's actually do this shit, right? It's like for a time, it's like, yeah, like let's actually do this shit, right? Because we're excited. The key is that once that excitement ends, all this shit comes back. The ego activates again, and then it's like we go back to this shit, right? And so I find that like for myself it happens after like 1 or 2 or 3 days after I get excited, and then like after like 2 or 3 days it like kind of goes back. So that's why I like having a goal of 1 week or 30 days depending on like I guess what level I'm at, or like the difficulty of what I want to do, or like how I want to plan it out. That's because we want to actually see the ego on day 3 and then still tell it like, no, I'm not going here. I'm not going and binging that stuff, right? So yeah, anyway, hopefully this was helpful.